All right, today we're diving into what looks like a major comeback for Mistral AI. After their last release kind of missed the mark, they've just dropped two brand new, powerful coding models and a really slick command line tool. So the big question is, have they actually redeemed themselves this time? Let's get into it.
So yeah, that's really the central question here, isn't it? After a bit of a stumble, can Mistral, who's always been a huge player in the open source game, really climb back to the top of the open weight model world?
You have to remember, Mistral has a serious legacy to protect. They were right there alongside Meta's Llama, really pushing the whole open weight movement forward. They even gave us the very first open weight mixture of experts model, which was a huge deal back in the day. But lately, other players have been stealing the spotlight. This new release really feels like Mistral is stepping back into the ring to remind everyone they're still a contender. And their answer comes in two main parts. A whole new family of coding models they're calling Devstral, and a new coding assistant to go with it, the Mistral Vibe CLI. Let's break down what these are all about. Okay, first up, the models themselves. We've got two of them. There's Devstral 2, which is the real heavyweight here, packing 123 billion parameters and released under a modified MIT license. And then you have Devstral Small 2, a much lighter 24 billion parameter model with a more permissive Apache 2.0 license. And get this, it's so efficient that a compressed version can actually run on standard consumer hardware. That is a total game changer for accessibility. So let's dig a little deeper into the big one, Devstral 2. It's a 123 billion parameter dense transformer. Now, what that basically means is it uses all of its brain power for every single task, unlike a mixture of experts model. And on top of that, it's got a massive 256,000 token context window, which is perfect for tackling those really complex coding projects that span across a ton of different files. All right, the specs are definitely impressive, but that's just on paper. How does it actually perform when you put it up against the competition? Let's see how it fares in the gauntlet. So check this out. On the SWE bench, which is a notoriously difficult benchmark for solving real-world software engineering problems, Devstral 2 scores an incredible 72.2%. It's pretty telling that Mistral chose to highlight this one specific, really tough benchmark. It's basically them planting a flag at the top of the open weight leaderboard. And it gets better. In head-to-head showdowns with actual human testers, Devstral comes out on top against its main rival, DeepSeek v3.2. People preferred it 43% of the time, and when you add in the times it was a tie, that number jumps up to around 70%. In the open weight world, that's a pretty decisive win. But honestly, look at this table. This is where Devstral 2's story gets really wild. It's delivering this top-tier, best-in-class performance while being 5 times smaller than DeepSeek v3.2 and an incredible 8 times smaller than Kimi K2. That's not just an improvement, that's a monumental leap in efficiency, making this kind of power way more affordable and accessible for developers everywhere. Okay, but we do have to keep things in perspective here. While Devstral 2 is clearly leading the open weight pack, it is still trailing behind the absolute best closed source models like Claude Sonnet 4.5 in those human preference tests. It just goes to show you that the gap between open and closed source, while it's definitely getting smaller, is still there. But even with that gap, the early partners who got their hands on this are, well, they're seriously impressed. The team at Klein called it a massive contribution, and they were really excited about its ability to use external tools just as well as the best closed models. That's so important for creating those agentic workflows, where the AI can handle complex tasks all on its own. And Kilo Code had a monster launch, processing over 17 billion tokens in just the first 24 hours. So let's shift gears now to the second part of this big release and see how this all comes together in a tool you can actually use, the new Mistral Vibe CLI. Now, the magic that makes the Vibe CLI work so well is something called the Agent Communication Protocol, or ACP. You can think of it like a universal adapter. It's what lets this command line tool plug right into any code editor that supports it, like the super popular Z editor. It makes the whole thing incredibly flexible. And this thing is loaded with some seriously powerful features. For one, it's project aware, which means it understands your entire code base, not just the one file you're looking at. It can intelligently pull in other files and commands, and it can even make coordinated changes across multiple files at the same time. For any developer, that's a massive time saver. So, the benchmarks are fantastic, and the features sound amazing. But you know how it is. How does it actually hold up when you take it out of the lab and into the real world? Let's see what happened when it was put through a practical test.
The challenge was pretty simple. A very standard request for a coding assistant. Just ask the Mistral Vibe CLI, powered by Devstral 2, to create a basic landing page for a SaaS product.
And the results? Well, they were a little bit of a mixed bag. As you can see right here, the page that Devstral made had some definite issues, including a dark mode toggle that was just completely broken. When you compare that to DeepSeek's version, even though it wasn't perfect, it did a much better job of actually following the prompt.
So, the verdict from this real-world test drive was, and I quote, very mixed vibes. And this is such a classic example of that gap between benchmarks and reality. A model can absolutely crush it on a standardized test, but then struggle with the messy, unpredictable nature of a real-world task. It's a great reminder that benchmarks don't tell the whole story.
So, after all that, what is the final verdict? Has Mistral really, truly made a comeback? Let's try and sum it all up. Well, on the one hand, you've got Devstral 2, an absolute champion on the benchmarks and a new leader in efficiency, which makes it an incredibly cost-effective choice. But on the other hand, it's still playing catch-up with the best of the best closed-source models, and its real-world performance isn't always quite as clean as its test scores might suggest. And this brings us right back to the beginning. Mistral has given us a model that is powerful and unbelievably efficient. But in a landscape where practical, real-world results are what ultimately matter, is being the most efficient enough to be the best? That is the question that's going to define Mistral's future. Thanks for tuning in.